All right, we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. And hello, Bridget. Thank you for joining us for a live chat today.
Hello. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
It is such a pleasure. And thank you guys for bearing with us. I was telling Bridget I had to go unbox like a brand new webcam to get this to work. And I'm realizing that my fade looks sort of weird now, but it is what it is. Um, so I'm super excited because you are a science fantasy author, which is one of my favorite fantasy subgenres, and you write young adult. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your books for those
Sure.
who don't know you?
Yeah, so I write, actually, I was initially a playwright, and I still am.
Oh,
I live in the San Francisco area, and I've worked with a number of small theaters here. But I've also just always wanted to write fiction. And so my first novel is The Twin Stars. There it
I
is.
love that cover, by
Um,
the way.
oh, thank you so much. Yeah. And so it's a trilogy. It's about I think of it as kind of like Star Wars meets The Wizard of Oz or Star Wars meets Narnia. It's a
Mm.
portal fantasy.
Oh,
So it's
nice.
about a 16-year-old girl who has a lot of anxiety and kind of escapes from that anxiety through writing in her journal. Not at all based on me, right? Um, and so she writes a fantasy story in her journal set on a distant planet. And then she ends up falling through a portal into her fantasy world. And so then has to interact with characters that she created, a villain that she created, and kind of figure out how to deal with, coming face to face with these fictional characters that are now real. Um,
Wow.
yeah, and she also set the way that she kind of wrote this. She set it up so that this world was in great peril. So now she has to
Mm.
deal with being in a world that's in great peril. So
Mm.
that's the first one, and then the second one is the Silver Sail, and this came out last year, and then the third one is on pre-order now. So that's where
Oh,
I am.
oh, wow. So you've got pretty much a trilogy. Hey, Matthew, good to see you on. And everybody watching. If you do have questions and you're watching live, just drop them in the comments and I'll pull them up on the screen. If you're watching the replay, you can leave your questions in the comment section and I'll make sure they get to Bridget that way. But how was the transition from going to playwright to writing prose? Because I know a lot of us want to go the other way. Like, oh, I've written a book. I want to make this a play or I want to make this a screenplay. How was that
Yeah,
for you?
it was really an interesting transition. And it was kind of like a process. You have to almost shift and use another part of your writing brain to do it. Because
Mm.
as a playwright, basically you're taught to avoid exposition.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
everything has to come through dialogue. And so then when I switched to writing novels, it was kind of a strange step to now realize, I can't just write exit Olive, right? I have to describe how she walks to the door and exits. And now I can describe characters' inner thoughts. And not
Mm.
everything has to come out through dialogue.
Mm.
So it's just a different sort of writing, but at the same time, I think a lot transfers. So,
Mm-hmm.
like principles of character development, of plot structure, a lot of that I think is can be applied to both playwriting and fiction.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And I think one of the things that's harder, maybe for writers, is getting the dialogue right. And as a playwright, that's obviously something that you've had to study a lot because a lot is shown through spoken dialogue
Yeah.
on a play side. But with that said, though, just a question from the technical writing side for the writers who are watching. If they wanted to adapt their book to a play, do you have any advice for them on how to do that?
Yeah, adapting a book to a play. Um, I think that can be, and I have not tried to do that. Um, I think some has to be, you have to make a choice, right,
Mm,
about like what to emphasize and what to keep. And I think the same
mm,
thing applies if you're trying to adapt a book to a film. Because with a book, right, you have hundreds of pages, and you
mhm,
can go into
mhm,
depth on all these characters. With a film or with a play, you have 2 hours, so you can't keep everything, and especially with the play, you probably can't keep all your characters
mm,
because it's better to have fewer in general with a play. So, that background character on page, 256, like you might have to combine them with somebody else or figure out how to do it without them. So I would say, yeah, just think about like who are the central characters and what is kind of the central heart of the story that you can
mm.
find a way to tell on stage in 2 hours.
That's great, great advice. So if you're going to go into this, just go into it being aware that you need to abridge your own book. Um, Matthew, I see your question. It's a very subjective question when it comes to pricing. Book 16,000 words is technically a novella. Um, like you said, YA urban fantasy novella. But when I'm pricing personally, I look at comp books in length and genre and say, what are the traditional books selling for and what are the self pub books selling for? And if the other books in your genre are going for $2.99 to $4.99 for an ebook and $9.99 to $14.99 for a paperback, then shoot somewhere around there. But that's, like I said, completely subjective. And I know you said paperback, so that's really up to you. I know it's a lot harder as a writer of novellas. I don't know if Bridgette's done any novellas, but as a writer of novellas, it's very difficult to sell print copies of novellas.
Mm.
So I actually decided to write them as ebooks, and then I've combined them all into an omnibus. So there's a 5 volume paper or hardback series of my novellas for Splitting Worlds, and that is selling, I think, for $14.99, but I'll have to check. Um, Bridget, how about you? Do you have any experience with like the pricing and print side?
I did. Yeah, I think your advice is really good to just look at comparable books. That's basically what I did for mine. And then like think about your goals. Is your goal like to make money? Is
Mm-hmm.
your goal like to get more like widely read? I do a lot of like discounts, a lot of sales, a lot of like limited time discounts, especially on my ebooks. And
Mm-hmm.
you don't make much, if anything, from that, but it's you can they get more widely read. Um, I've done like a free limited time, giving away for free even an ebook,
Mm-hmm.
which is just to kind of help get your name out there. And I'm a very new writer, so I think it also depends on like how big your following is. Are you just new to this? Are you more well established?
Mm-hmm.
For novellas, yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense that um like have them as ebooks, and then when you have several of them, then bundle them together into a
Mm-hmm.
into a print version.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for example, Bridget's The Silver Sale is like I think about 350 pages, and the paperback on that is right at $11, which is a
Yeah.
steal for that many books. And congratulations, Matthew, on your first published book too. That we won't get too far into the weeds on pricing and stuff because I know there's a lot of readers who are on too. So those are definitely great questions. I might come back and do a video about pricing books in the indie author behind the scenes playlist later on. But Bridget, you are also a teacher.
I am.
So do your students know you write, or is this like your secret life?
I usually mention to them that I write. Yeah. I don't know if
Yeah.
they look up my books or anything like that, but I think as a teacher it's nice to be able to say like I do this myself,
Mm-hmm.
and then I can use examples from my own writing
Mm-hmm.
when I'm talking about process, or difficulties that I've had and writer's block and all of those things that students sometimes struggle with, I can say, yeah, I know. I've uh,
Hmm.
I've been there many, many times. Um,
Yes.
but yeah,
So
it's
Violet,
fun.
she's a young 16-year-old in the first book, right? I think she's 16. How was, I guess, really, what was the most challenging part of channeling the darkness that she faces in that book? Because she's really facing her worst fears and her
Mhm.
biggest, like, internal crises in a way. Um, how were you able to channel that while still keeping that content YA?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. I think a lot of it was I kind of thought about my own challenges when I was that age, and
Hmm.
the anxiety and the OCD that I struggled with
Hmm.
as a teenager, especially, who didn't really understand it. And so I sort of was able to challenge that. And there are a couple of, I think it does stay YA, but there are a couple of scenes that are potentially kind of scary. Characters. There's a scene where Olive has a kind of a vision of being in a plane crash.
Hmm.
And I can be a nervous flyer, so that was kind of
Hmm.
scary. That was kind of a, I could see how that could be a little bit nerve-wracking for people. It is just a vision, though, and I think
Hmm.
that's kind of how, partly how I've dealt with it is, a lot of these things that she goes through are very, very scary, but they aren't. There's aspects of them that aren't real, and when she sort
Hmm.
of learns that she can live with the anxiety and she can get through it and survive, then that gives her strength.
Absolutely. And she's a much stronger character when she comes into book two. And I'd say, honestly, sort of a little bit of a better friend in book two, maybe because she knows who she is and is more comfortable with that. But she goes into book two with a friend circle. Do you have a favorite of the friend circle?
Oh. Oh, I love all my characters. How can I pick a favorite?
Let me
Um,
reword it. Which one was the most fun to write?
I'm gonna say maybe Belle, because she's in a way like her personality is so different from
Mm,
Olive's. She's very optimistic. She's kind of humorous and playful, and very brave. And I think it's good to have, when I'm writing characters, I try to write contrast.
mhm,
And then, as opposed to a character like Jamble, who is very much like the main character. He's very much like Olive, um, and that makes like an interesting dynamic too. But I try to make characters that are foils for each other, that contrast each other. So I
mhm.
think, I like the interaction between Olive and Belle for that reason.
Awesome. And really, I think what's interesting about her circle of friends is that they're willing to follow her into this, really, it's an ever changing world because she's the one that started this, but she's changing it as she goes along. I don't want to be too spoilery, but did you originally intend for the shift in antagonist role that ended up happening in book one?
Yes. Yeah, that was intended from the very beginning. Um,
Wow.
yeah, and I don't wanna it is spoilery, so I don't wanna say too much about it, but yeah.
Yeah. And if you're watching and you want to read the book or look at the book, the links are all in the description box as well. You can go
Um,
grab them there or follow Bridgette there. Um, so I saw that, really, with all your experience, you published the first book with an indie press, right?
yes.
How was that experience? Did you try querying first to go traditional, or did you know you wanted to do indie from the start?
I just yeah, I didn't query. I got lucky and I got connected to this indie press. It's called Titan One Studios, and they're based in Canada. Um, and they also do a lot of like video game development,
Mm.
content development for TV shows, things like that. They're actually in the process of developing a pitch for this series as a TV show, which is really exciting.
Ah,
Yeah,
yay.
that makes me super excited. I know like nothing about the TV world, so but it's been really great. I was connected to them initially through somebody I met in graduate school, and it's just been a really really good experience working with them. Yeah, they're very supportive, and they also give me like the flexibility that I need. So like if I want to run a sale, if I want to like try this and that, and I experiment with lots of different kinds of marketing, and I've had the freedom to do that. So it's been a really good experience.
Well, that's great. I know that we've got authors from all over the spectrum here. We've got hybrids that are partially traditional, partially, self. And one of the questions we seem to get almost every interview is, what made you decide to go indie? So I love that you just sort of
I
fell
just
into
sort
it
of
and it was a
did.
good fit.
Yeah. It wasn't a decision.
um, so we know book 3 is on pre-order right now.
It
Is
is,
book
yeah.
3 the last book, or can we expect more books
It
from?
is the last book of the trilogy. Yeah, so
Oh,
everything wraps up. I have some plans for future books, so I'm gonna keep writing them. But this will be the last book of the Cosima saga.
wow. How has that been
Also,
for you?
what's that?
How has that been for you? I know writing that last book is so hard.
Yeah, I feel like it hasn't because I'm still like in the mindset of finish it. Um, and it's basically done. It's with my editor right now. Um,
Mhm.
but I think when it's finally like when it's released, and that's going to be April 25th, I will feel the weight of having finished it, and then I'll probably have
Mhm.
to deal with that. Because yeah, this has been like I feel like these characters are my friends. I mean, I'm sure you've had that feeling as an author, like you know them, they're your friends.
Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
having to say goodbye in a sense is hard. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Um, this version was YA. Do you plan on writing an NA follow-up for the series?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I had not thought of it. I honestly, I think if I were to ever write a follow-up, it would probably be like not following Olive, but maybe like one of her children
Mm.
who
Mm.
like finds her journals in the future. So it might also be YA. Um, Not that I would never want to try an NA or an adult novel, but right now I'm kind of having fun in the YA space.
Mhm.
There's something about like that age where you're learning so much about yourself and you're
Mhm.
struggling with things and you feel things like so deeply.
Mhm.
Um, it's a fun kind of age to try to write about. So yeah.
Absolutely. You've got so much potential and you don't have to worry about, is there enough of this content or that content for it to qualify to stay adult? Speaking of content, one of the questions we get a lot here, there's a lot of romance readers that tune in, is there romance in the series?
There is, but I would say romance is not a, a central theme.
Mhm.
So, yeah, if you're looking for like a steamy romance, that won't be this. There is a little bit, and but I would say mostly it's like the theme is like friendship, and
Mm.
so there are very strong platonic friendship bonds that are formed
Mm.
between these characters.
Yeah. It's got some really classic ghost opera feels to it. I haven't finished it, but I've started it. It's got a sort of that Star Warsy strong friendship vibe to it, but yeah, I'm not far enough in, I guess, to to get to the romance yet. But yeah, so speaking of science fiction and fantasy, I know when we started doing self-publishing stuff 10, 20 years ago, those genres were very, very separate. Have you found it difficult to walk that line of sort of the merge of both?
Yeah, a little bit. Which is a little bit strange given how popular Star Wars is, which,
Exactly.
which is right in that space fantasy genre. Um, but yeah, I have struggled a little bit with kind of how to position this, and I feel
Mhm.
like it's definitely not straight sci-fi,
Mhm.
because there's magic, there's elements of magic. Um, there is space travel, especially in the second one. So in the Silver Sail, there's like a big starship. There's a lot of space travel, but it's not like super realistic space travel. So you know, if it wouldn't be a book for somebody who's expecting like hard sci-fi and like realistic technologies. So it leans, I think, like more toward the fantasy side of that spectrum.
Yeah. Like Matthew said, I just wrote my book and thought about what genre it was in later.
Later.
I think a lot of us do that. It's like we write our first book and then we're like, now what is this?
Yeah, and I think I've learned, like, so for my next one, I'm gonna like think a little bit more about genre and marketing before I jump in writing it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, in one sense, you should just write what you want. You should write what's in your heart and not worry about too much about whether it fits into a certain marketing slot. But at the same time, like, if you want to really like do this professionally, like, you do have to think about that.
Mm-hmm.
So like my next one's going to be more sci-fi, not fantasy. So it's going to be young adult sci-fi.
Mm-hmm. And that's a really hard genre to write. My hat is off to you. Because, like you said earlier, you know, the sci-fi has to be realistic. It has to make sense, but you also don't want it to be too hard for young adult because you don't want to lose the readers. So,
Yeah.
have you thought about teaching writing?
So I do teach writing.
Oh,
Um,
sorry.
well, yeah, I do. I've taught different age groups. Right now, I'm teaching college, but the class that I'm teaching now isn't like creative writing. It's more like composition, which is
Mm-hmm.
great. Like that's fun to teach too. But I think I really love teaching creative writing. I'm going to be teaching a playwriting class later this summer. Um, and I hope to be able to teach more of the things on the creative side because that's just really fun.
Mm-hmm. Um, oh, I like this question a lot. Um, if your book is signed for a TV show, how much creative input will you have?
I think that I will have a considerable amount. Just that's I've been included so far in like the discussion around it and
Mm-hmm.
developing the pitches and things like that. Um, Clearly, it's based on the novels, so I have that control. Um, there are some changes suggested by the person who is developing it, and I've been consulted on those changes, and they're changes that I actually really like.
Hmm.
So, like, oh, I wish I'd thought of that.
So I guess your knowledge of the playwright stuff, like you said, knowing that you're going to have to cut out some characters or knowing
Yeah.
other things too. Um, Matthew, so we're actually streaming on multiple platforms, and only the YouTube questions are ones that I can pull up here. So if you're watching social, I'm having to grab them off the browser. But if you want your question pulled up, to Matthew's point, you can come back. Matthew is asking, where did I get that question? You can come back and drop them on YouTube, and we'll just pull them right up there. Um, yeah, so very exciting. Very exciting. A lot in the works. Any in-person events this year?
Yeah, I'm going to be going to the Bay Area Book Festival, which is going to be in Berkeley. I need to look at the dates because I can't remember off the top of my head.
Mhm.
Um, but I went last year, and it was like a 2-day festival, and it was a lot of fun.
Mhm.
So I'm for sure doing that, and then I'm not sure about anything else yet. It has to kind of like fit around my teaching schedule.
Mhm.
Um, but but yeah, I'm definitely doing the Bay Area one.
Congratulations. So if you're in the Bay Area, you can go meet Bridgette to talk about
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I should have looked up when it was. No, I think it's in the summer. I should know this. But yeah, if you just like look up Bay Area Book Festival, yeah, it's really great.
That's awesome.
Also, I wanted to let everybody know that I'm doing a special pre-order campaign right now for the third book in my series. And basically, everybody who pre-orders and emails me like a screenshot, right, proof of their pre-order, gets chapter 1 for free, and then also gets a bookmark and a book plate. So that's
Wow.
everybody who pre-orders. And then you'll also be in a drawing for the grand prize, which is a couple of things. It's a gift card, $50 Amazon or Barnes and Noble or whatever you use, and then a pair of these. I don't know how well you can see them, but they're book earrings.
Oh,
So
wow.
they're actually the cover of my first book, um, and an art print. So yeah, I don't have all of the details there up on my website yet, but I literally like just launched this. But I'm going to put those up on my website really soon. And yeah, if anybody's interested in pre-ordering, that's what's available.
Awesome. So yeah, definitely go click the link in the description box and find Bridgette's social media so you can follow her when she posts more about the giveaways. I've got one last question for you, Bridgette, before we sign off today. And really, that is if you were going to give advice to your younger self about writing, about publishing, and all of this, what would it be and why?
Oh, wow. I think I would like tell myself to be patient.
Mm,
Yeah, and I would tell myself that it just takes a long time and of practice
mm-hmm,
to get, good at writing, but nothing that you write is ever wasted.
mm-hmm,
When I think starting when I was about 16, I wrote this really, really long. It came out to like 800 pages, like Star Wars style space opera, like epic. And I put like so much into that. And then when it started getting too long and I realized I was falling into plot holes, it was like I was just heartbroken that
mm-hmm.
this wasn't going to work. And I think I would have told myself, like, yeah, you're going to write a lot of stuff that is not good, and that's okay. And don't try to be perfect, just try to
Mm,
write. And that applies whether you're, young and starting out or even now. Like, don't try to write things don't have the goal your first draft of anything that it's going to be good.
yeah,
Just
yeah.
write. Like, get the words out. That would be my
Mm.
advice.
I second all of those things. You don't have to have a perfect first draft. And definitely, if anybody's followed me for any length of time, yeah, don't rush. Don't rush. Practice makes perfect, and patience makes perfect when it comes to all of this. So, great
Definitely.
advice. Thank you so much for hopping on
Thank
and
you.
sharing about your books and your expertise and everything with us.
Yeah, thank you. This was really fun.
I'm super excited to have met you. If anybody has questions for Bridgette and you're watching the replay again, feel free to drop them in the comments. I'll make sure that those get to Bridgette. Oh, you're welcome, Luna. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you to everybody who watched live. If you would like to meet more indie authors across the fantasy and sci-fi genres, I have more indie author live chats coming up now through the end of March, and some indie author live reads too. So you can sample some of these books and then get hooked and have to quit what you're reading to go buy them. So subscribe to catch all of those. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.